Today we're going to be replacing a CV axle on a Honda Civic. Let's get to work. This is what we'll be working on today, an 8th generation Honda Civic EX. This one has an automatic transmission. And we're going to be replacing the right or passenger side CV axle. Now, the first thing we'll do, raise the vehicle up and we'll put it on jack stands. Now, to lift it up from the front here, this area right here, that's going to be our designated lift area on these Hondas in the front. So we can put our jack right here and we can lift the whole front end up, and then we'll put our jack stands on each side. Alright, the designated spots for our jack stands once we jack the vehicle up in the air is going to be these reinforced brackets right here. We got one right here, so we're going to put a jack stand here, and we got one on the other side. We're not going to get under a vehicle with just a jack. We're always going to put jack stands so we're safe. Before I lift the front end up, I got the rear wheels chalked on both sides. Here's a shot of the jack stand placement. While I'm doing this job, I'm also doing a transmission fluid service, and I already drained the transmission fluid on this because there was a small transmission fluid leak that I fixed. Now there may be more, but I at least fixed one, and so I drained the fluid. I already got the bolt put back with the new washer and torqued down, but it's not filled back up. So when I pop the CV axle out, I shouldn't lose any fluid. Now, depending on your circumstances, when you pop CV axles out, you may lose a little bit of fluid. If that's the case, definitely, properly check that fluid level when you're all done before you drive the vehicle. And so I don't forget to fill it back up. I left a note for myself. If we look at our CV axle on the inner joint, we can see why we're replacing it. The boot split open, lost all its grease. So when that happens, if it's been like this for any length of time, I just go ahead and replace the CV axle. A lot of times it used to be we could fix these by popping the axle out and replacing just that boot. But with the cost of labor nowadays and the cost of a new axle, nobody does that anymore. We just replace them with a brand new axle. We'll go ahead and remove the wheel. Remember this center cap, we'll talk about it later. I'm just using a 19mm socket, obviously with an impact wrench. Alright, now I'm going to pull our axle nut off. I'm going to use an impact wrench, and we are going to need a 32mm socket. So I'll just put the socket on the impact wrench. I should be able to zip that off, no problem. Now, because I'm using an impact wrench, I don't have to worry about holding our wheel because this is going to turn. If you don't have an impact wrench, and this would be like one of the tools I would definitely buy. Right after wrenches and sockets and screwdrivers, I would probably buy an impact wrench. But anyway, if you don't have one of these, you're going to need to use a 32mm socket and a long breaker bar, and you're going to have to hold this whole assembly still while you break it loose. In order to do that, you're either going to have somebody, an assistant, step on the brakes in there, and then you should be able to crack it loose, or you have to pop the center cap off the rim or off the wheel, and then put everything back on, tighten your lug nuts up, and then you'll have, with that cap off, you'll have access to this. And then you have to lower the vehicle back to the ground, and by having the weight of the vehicle with the rim on there, it'll hold everything still and you can break it loose. So a little bit more work doing it that way, but it can be done. Now, these axle nuts are staked down, and so if you're going to do it that way, you'll probably want something like this, where you hammer this in and it'll lift that stake up a little bit and make it easier to get off. Now, with an impact wrench, I don't have to worry about that, but if you don't have an impact wrench, you'll want to use something like this that you can hammer. I would avoid using a regular screwdriver because you could shatter the end of the handle, and that will usually come back at you and hurt you, so I don't recommend that unless it's a screwdriver that's made for impact where you can hammer it on the end. Otherwise, you'll want to use something like this, the proper tool for that. So this is the setup I'm using to take it off. A Milwaukee impact wrench. This is an older model. And this gear wrench axle nut set. There's the part number. Now, if you are going to use a tool like this, of course, you'll want to wear safety glasses, which I am. And then we just put it in there. You just tap it like that and lift it up enough so it's not going to, slow you down from loosening it up. Like I said, I didn't need to do that. I just wanted to show you. Alright, let's go ahead and pop this axle nut off. Alright, hopefully our axle is not seized inside there, but it doesn't seem to be moving. Yeah, it's moving. I'm using a plastic hammer so we don't deform it, but it's moving now, so we're good. If that didn't work, we can use some kind of center punch or an air hammer and just tap it like that, but you can see we're good, it's moving. We don't have to worry about it being seized in there. Now, we need to get our axle out of the hub. In order to do that, we have to get our knuckle out of the way. There's a couple ways we can do that. We can disconnect it from the top. We can take the nuts and bolts off where it attaches to our strut, drop the knuckle this way. Or we can go from the bottom where the ball joint attaches to the lower control arm, and we can disconnect it there, and we can move our knuckle out of the way this way. Either way is fine, doesn't matter which way you do it. Just remember, anytime you take the nuts and bolts off here or down below, they're supposed to be replaced, as well as the spindle nut here. All of the hardware has to be replaced, at least according to Honda, and that's what I recommend. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go from the bottom here, and I'll show you how it says to do it in the service manual, the Honda service manual. So we'll go from the bottom, but it doesn't matter which way you go. You can go from the top too. Just remember, if you drop your knuckle this way, you're going to have to disconnect this line and disconnect your ABS also, because otherwise it'll be too tight and you won't be able to have enough room when you drop it. From underneath, this is what we're going to have to remove. This nut, and this bolt right here. We're going to need a 17mm socket and either a ratchet, maybe a breaker bar, depending on how tight they are, or an impact wrench. I'll be using an impact wrench. Alright, we'll see if the little Milwaukee can get these loose. Now, I'm just going to stick a pry bar right here and then just pry it apart. And you can see it's disconnected and out of our lower control arm here. And as long as this isn't seized inside here, you should be able to pull it out just like I showed you. Now, from underneath the car, we just follow our CV axle along to our inboard joint over here, and we just need to pop it out. We're just going to use a pry bar. We're going to put, well, hopefully you can see it with my finger in the way, but we're going to put the pry bar right there and just pop it out. There, took a little more force than normal, but I just popped it out. And we'll just pull it straight out. We'll try not to get it at too much of an angle. We don't want to damage the seal that this thing goes through in there. This set ring right here on the end is what holds our CV axle into the transmission, so make sure the new one that you're going to install has one of these. Alright, there's our new axle. We're going with a brand new one, a Duralast Gold from AutoZone. Yeah, in a perfect situation, we would just go with all OEM Honda parts, but it's just not feasible, not with how much the parts cost and the age of this car. So in order to save money, we're going with an aftermarket part. And there's your part number right there. It does come with a new axle nut. I did do a little prep work. I cleaned up underneath. And right there where it slides into our transmission seal, I put a little bit of brand new Honda ATF fluid on there. And I put some fluid film in there on the splines, so that way it'll help prevent it from seizing. Alright, we're just going to take our new CV axle and go straight through and put it into our transmission there without damaging the seal. And taking a look underneath, you can see that we're all the way in, and we can just gently tug on it and it shouldn't come out, so we're good to go. If you're having trouble and you feel like it's not going in, the splines might not be lined up, so you may need to turn it a little bit or take it out, try it again. Just try not to damage that transmission seal. Alright, now the fun part, we got to pull this back a little bit and get that in there, and we want the splines to line up. There we go. Sometimes they don't want to play nice. Sometimes they just slip right in. Alright, now we got to get our ball joint back into place on our lower control arm. Okay, now we can go ahead and secure our ball joint with brand new nuts and bolts. So for the nuts, there's your part number there. Of course you'll need 2 of them. And then for the bolt, there's the part number for that. We'll go ahead and get everything started by hand. Now these are locking type nuts, so once they get to about that far, it definitely stiffens up. Now we're going to have to use some tools to put them all the way down. Alright, I'm just going to use my impact to bring it down close, because we do have a torque sequence that we have to use. The one towards the front of the car, we tighten that nut first. Then the one towards the rear of the car, we tighten that one second, and the bolt, we tighten third. And they're going to be 43 foot-pounds. I'll double check. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But we just want to bring this down a little bit. Okay, those are pretty close. Now we can do our final torque. We'll just bring them down close. Now we'll do the final torque. It is 43 foot-pounds. Now we got to torque our axle nut down. Honda tells you in service info to put a little bit of engine oil right here on the mating surface of the axle nut, the new one. I already have fluid film back there, so I'm not going to put oil in addition to that. But we have to torque this down to 134 foot-pounds on this model. If you have an SI model, it'll be 181 foot-pounds. Alright, now we have to hold it still so we can torque this down. So I'm just using a pry bar like that. And we'll just go ahead and torque it down to 134 foot-pounds. Okay, now we just got to stake this down. I have a homemade little tool that I use for this. And we can go ahead and clean up our grubby little paw prints. We'll go ahead and reinstall our wheel. Remember, don't put your hands in pinch points. Grab the side. We'll pull our wheel chocks. We'll go ahead and torque our lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. And now I'm going to refill the transmission with genuine Honda ATF fluid. Well, that's it for this one, and as always, if the video helped you out or you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.